So welcome everyone to the Praxie Best Practice Masterclass. We have Tom Kloppenborg with us, who is the author of Be Agile, Do Agile. He is a longtime project manager. He's been doing project management for decades. He's a trainer, consultant, and facilitator at Xavier Leadership Center at Xavier University, and also president of Kloppenborg and Associates. And he has been working in project management and Agile. He's written over a dozen books. He's working with the Project Management Institute right now, doing some leadership development, executive development work. And so what I'd like to do is just introduce Tom right now. Tom, maybe just give us a quick thumbnail of your background, and then we'll dive right into some of your big ideas from Be Agile, Do Agile.
Okay, thank you, Soren, and hello, everybody. I am delighted to be able to be here. As Soren said, I do have project management's been sort of the crux of my background. I bought jet engines, I sold elevators, I did a lot of things on a project basis before I became a professor, and then that was the main thing I did for many years. I found I like writing books better than I like writing articles. And so I'm doing that more or less full time now. I'm editing a lot of books that other people are writing. It was interesting. My Agile started about 14 years ago, maybe, because the first edition of my textbook, which was called Contemporary Project Management, came out. And I had one reviewer who said, well, it doesn't have anything about Agile. Why is it contemporary? And I was kind of hurt. So I decided I really needed to learn about Agile. So I've been studying Agile for some time and decided we really needed to write a book about it. And because there's so much written about Agile, so much talked about it. And some of it is people who do Scrum or who do XP or one of the particular approaches are pretty good at that approach, but their language is a little different than people who are doing another approach, and some of the mechanics are different. Also, I think some people are convinced when they do the mechanics of Agile, they go through the ceremonies that they're doing it, but they don't understand it. And if you try to do some of the Agile without having the understanding, at least you're probably going to have limited success. And unfortunately, at most, some things may backfire on you.
So Tom, let's dive into some of those best practices so that things don't backfire on you. You've got 3 big ideas from your book that you converted into your book app. Mm-hmm. Yep. One of them is really the title of your book. It's Be Agile and Do Agile. Can you just bring that big idea to life? What does that really mean?
What it really means is if you're sort of a behavioral type person and you're attracted to the ideas behind it and you learn the ideas, but you don't learn the techniques, you're going to be well-meaning but ineffective probably. On the other hand, if you're more of a process type person and you learn a lot of the techniques and even the metrics by which you're measured and everything, but you don't understand how you need to treat people differently in Agile than in an old-fashioned command and control type environment, it is simply not going to work, and there are going to be a lot of frustrated people. You need to put both together, and that's exactly we spent most of the book talking about, most of the first half what it is to be Agile, the second half what it is to do Agile, the very final chapter. And we debated about making this longer. We decided not to be too prescriptive because we think the best Agile organizations are not too prescriptive. But we're suggesting, why don't you, when you look at an idea of simplicity, for instance, what are some of the techniques that you can use that really effectively help you implement simplicity? And so we've given people a whole variety of ideas of what tools and techniques of Agile they can use with what mindset ideas of Agile, combine them for maximum effectiveness.
Got it. So Be Agile is really about the mindset. It's about maybe kind of embracing the cultural dimensions of really what does it mean to be agile. And then the Do Agile part is the practical tools and templates and just making it really work in your organization. Is that
yes?
Fair enough?
And some language that you'll hear batted around, which is probably fairly accurate, big A Agile is the Be Agile. That's the understanding it. Little A Agile is doing it. That's the, the techniques and the metrics and so forth.
Well, you've simplified it in an amazing way. It's just two things: Be Agile, Do Agile. So then let's dive into what that really means. So what's your second big idea really is Be Agile, I think. So what does that really mean? What does Be Agile mean?
Well, let me talk about how we put this together. And by the way, I did work with my partner, with Vital Anatatmula. So it's not just me, but I put both leaves on our dining room table and used little Post-it notes, and every idea that somebody has in one of the approaches, disciplined Agile or PMI's approach to Agile or whatever, I put on Post-it notes, and we had well over 100 of those, and had to group them. And every approach, Scrum and XP and so forth, they each group things differently, but we wanted it to be an agnostic approach. We wanted it to be one that, regardless of what way your corporation is doing Agile, would be effective, and you could talk to people in other organizations and understand each other. We ended up grouping those many, many ideas into 3 buckets. One is understanding and creating successful outcomes. And that is really the crux of Agile in my mind, because we're not looking anymore at just delivering the scope that we promised in the contract. What we're trying to do is solve our clients' problems. We're helping them to create something with a lot of their input that's going to be useful to them. The second one is engaging your team, because we really want team members to step up, but you can't just say, okay, you guys make a decision. You can't treat them the same way you've always treated people and expect them to be ready and willing to really actively lead and make plans and so forth. And then the third thing is effective communication and collaboration beyond your team with all your various stakeholders. So understanding and creating successful outcomes, working well with your team, and working well with all your stakeholders.
Well, that all makes sense. I mean, we know that culture eats strategy for lunch and breakfast and dinner. And so being agile really means embracing kind of people and the norms and values of how people work. So those outcomes are really important. I would imagine measuring success is important around, quantifying, what you're trying to achieve. That team engagement, the communication and collaboration, that all makes sense. Those are big concepts. And so your third big idea is really Do Agile, which means how do you implement it? So give us a sense of what doing Agile really means and how you kind of land the plane from the mindsets of being Agile to actually implementing.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and if being Agile had a lot of ideas that we grouped, it was 100+ ideas. Doing Agile, originally we had almost 200 tools and metrics, and we had to deduplicate first because several different approaches to Agile use similar but not identical metrics or tools. But anyway, when we grouped all those and we grouped the groups and all that, we ended up coming up with 3 different things. One is planning adaptively. What that means is, yes, you do some upfront planning, but far less than in predictive project management, the traditional. How do you plan incrementally or plan on a continuous basis, depending on the life cycle that you're using? And by the way, the life cycle, understanding the different life cycles is a big part of planning adaptively. The second one is creating useful solutions. So that kind of ties back into that successful outcomes thing. depending on what type of approach you use to Agile, what type of approach you use for the life cycle. Are you planning in increments or sprints, little bursts, or are you planning continuously? There are different tools that help you with each of those. But there are also a lot of tools that help you actually build your product, monitor and control the progress, decide when you're ready to release it to your clients and so forth. And then the third thing is giving and adapting to feedback. Feedback is really a big part of Agile. Part of the reason why we plan in little bursts and demonstrate what we've got is so we can get feedback as quickly as possible. The last thing you ever want to do is turn something into a client after a long period of a lot of work and a lot of investment and have them say, oh no, that's not what I meant. What we're really trying to do is avoid that at all costs. We're trying to find feedback, positive and negative, as fast as we can. And it means we have to listen for it. We can't just fight back when they say they don't like it. We have to understand what's behind it and engage them in meaningful conversation and make improvement. And improvement is a big part of the feedback. Agile teams tend to stay together a long time. And part of the value of that is all that you've learned, in the first weeks and months, you can keep building on that. So anyway, the Do Agile, I got carried away a little there, is three things: planning adaptively, creating useful solutions, and giving and adapting to feedback.
So those are three obviously important buckets. I was intrigued by the 200 tools that you analyzed to get to those buckets.
Yeah.
Maybe you can highlight, how would you use some of these tools and which tools, and how would you think about doing this in a real project? Bring this to life for us.
Okay. Well, the project that I'm the Scrum Master on right now is probably different than what a lot of you are doing. We're creating a new Arboretum, and we got it approved. We're official, international certification and all that, but it's a very small one. I live in a small community, and we have a 5-acre site, and we have, I think, 58 named species now, which is about double what we had 2 years ago when we decided that we might want to do this. But a lot of the things that we had to do, for instance, and this isn't really going back to the tool, it's going back to the very first part of being Agile in successful outcomes. We want to understand, what is the vision? So we had to get stakeholders together and create a common vision for what we wanted to develop. And part of it is, it's called a Heritage Center. In our part of the, where we live, a building that's 200 years old is quite old. And we have a 200-year-old building there. So what we wanted to do was create an acreage that was similar to what would have been there 200 years ago. But at the same time, it would be really good for educating our citizens so they could see a tree that they like and say, wow, I never heard of a pawpaw, but that would be a nice one for my yard. And so we based on all this, that education was part of it. What we ended up doing was we tried to be simple, the simplicity. And so we wanted one simple sign for each plant, but it couldn't say too much, but at the same time, we wanted to educate them. So we put QR codes on the signs so people could read a lot more about the particular thing that we're interested in. So you have to sort of combine some of the tools or even some of the concepts together in how you're doing things.
That's great. 2 more questions from me, and then we will wrap up your masterclass. The first one is, every culture is different. Every organization is different. Even within the similar industries, cultures are unique to the organization and sometimes team. How do we think about overcoming the biggest common barriers that might exist to both being Agile and doing Agile? What are those biggest barriers that anybody needs to really be aware of and look for and address?
Well, I think you really hit it in your question. It's the difference in culture from one organization to another, because so many projects are done between organizations, but also between parts of an organization. So, on our project. This is really a relatively small project in comparison to many. But our local government has 4 different departments, if you will, that have some interest or another in this. And the people who are interested in renting out the facility have very different views than the people who have to maintain it and so forth. So, and we just have a devil of a time trying to get them to come together. Actually, this is not that different than other projects I've been on. Early in my career, I used to say as a project manager, what I was really trying to do is facilitate the different departments in my client's organization so that we could really understand what they wanted. And I'm not sure I'm making as good a plug for the book on this as saying that this is not different than it is on a lot of other projects, trying to mesh things. I think because so much of the emphasis is on communication, transparent communication, and on feedback, rapid feedback, and on not fighting the feedback, but trying to understand it and work with it. I think maybe that emphasis is helping us maybe lessen the cultural divide a little bit. It does not eliminate it. It just helps us to work with it.
Great. And my last question for anyone who is picking up your book or getting into Agile, or maybe they're even experienced with project management, what are your recommendations for what they really should focus on out of the gate around success factors? Obviously, be agile and do agile, but is there anything else that people just need to really make sure they remember as they move forward and begin embracing Agile?
Well, the simple thing is treat people as people. In so many organizations, I think people are more ordered what to do. And generationally, of course, a lot of younger people rebel against that, and they should. But I think that's something that's ingrained in a lot of people. I'm the boss, I'm telling you what to do. We're trying to get away from that. And when we talk in the engaging your team, we talk about different types of leadership. And that would probably be a great place to look at, because we emphasize 3 types of leadership, 2 of which many of you are probably familiar with. Transformational leadership, where you've got trying to connect the project goal with individual goals that individual workers have. That's always a good thing. Servant leadership, where the leader's primary role is to help the follower to get things out of their way and everything. But the third one we're kind of defining, and that we're calling that emergent leadership, because we really believe that if you want all sorts of team members to take a leadership role where appropriate, you need to work with them. You need to create the atmosphere where they can. So we give you a lot of ideas on how to create an atmosphere so that people who are not normally used to leading, but have potential to lead within their own sphere, that they can do that. And I think the more leaders you have, the more rapid progress you can make.
Great insights, Tim. Thank you very much for participating in our masterclass on Agile. Where can we get more information about what you're doing and what are you doing?
Okay, thank you for that. First of all, thanks for inviting me. I've really enjoyed this, and I love the opportunity to talk about some of these things. I'm working with the local chapter of PMI, the Southwest Ohio chapter, and we're doing a series of 6 webinars that essentially are from this book. So the first of them is essentially chapter 3, which is the successful outcome one. And these are 1-hour webinars, and we're expecting people read the book, read that chapter before the class, and we'll put them in little groups, and we will use some examples and then give them some questions to work on. So it'll be highly interactive. Anyway, those are the 3rd Wednesday of each month, July through December, which means the first one starts tomorrow. However, we're taping those, and if you miss one or even a couple of them, you can make it up with the tape. We're putting the link in chat. So thank you for the opportunity to make that plug.
Absolutely. Sure thing, Tim. And if there's any other questions that have come up, please let us know. We do have a question from Connie Plowman. How do you see communications techniques or approaches differ between Agile projects and more traditional projects?
Connie, thank you. Let me put in a plug for her. Connie's latest book that she partnered with is on project communications. So she's probably at least as capable of answering that question as I am. I think I see it more because we're so much more trying to work in a teamwork and collaborative environment that we are making as many of our communications transparent as possible. We call them information radiators. So in the room or the place where the project team is, you're putting stuff up visually, and everybody is allowed to make changes. It's not like only the project manager can type stuff into the computer. And no, we're trying to be as transparent and timely as possible and collaborative in how we do it. I think a lot of good projects are doing some of that anyway, but it's much more collaborative on Agile projects.
I love the concept of information radiators. That's great. That's a great image in my mind. Mark Earhart has just asked a question. What are your thoughts on Agile for large enterprises, like using SAFe, for example? And maybe you can bring to life what SAFe is as well.
Okay, SAFe is probably the leading method to scale Agile projects. And it's not the only one, but there's a term that's used in Agile. They call it the team of teams or the scrum of scrums. So we like to keep Agile teams fairly small. A lot of people say 7 to 9 people on a team. Although some other people stretch the boundaries a little bit one way or the other. But the point is, if you're going to really have people work collaboratively and very well together, everybody's got to be able to speak, and everybody's got to trust that and smaller teams help with that. But a lot of projects require lots of people. There are lots of subsystems in that. So we need ways of scaling it. And typically the leader, the scrum master or whatever you call it, depending on your version of Agile on one team, might actually work with those scrum masters from several other teams so they coordinate. So you do need a method of scaling so that you can see the interaction between all the different parts. But you don't want to have 100 people watch 6 people talk. So that's kind of, I'm not sure if I've completely answered your question, but it's sort of the team of team concepts, I think, is really vital for scaling.
Yeah, and the complexity of large enterprise projects, change management, strategy, you have so many stakeholders. I think that comment or a question from Connie also connects in around, there's just so much complexity. The communications piece, I think, is ever more important in that context as well, right? Well, great. So I also want to give a plug to Connie because she is going to be leading our next masterclass for Praxie. So with that, thank you, Tim, for joining us. You did a great job. Your book is available at Business Expert Press, businessexpertpress.com. Your app for your book is available at praxie.com, or you can go to Business Expert Press and get a bundle of the book and the app together as well. So you can bring to life all of Tim's concepts. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining our session today. And Tim, thank you so much. It was really enlightening.
My pleasure. Thank you.